All right, welcome. Today, we're going to go on a guided tour, but we're not exploring a city or a museum. We're diving into a complex social issue to uncover a blueprint for how you can understand any challenging topic in a really clear, structured way.
So, let's be real. How do you even begin to wrap your head around something as huge and frankly as divisive as race and ethnicity? I mean, you're constantly bombarded with headlines, opinions, data points. It can feel completely overwhelming. Where do you even start? How do you tell what's real and what's just noise? That's the big question we're digging into.
So our guide on this journey is actually a reference book from 2012. Now, you might be thinking, 2012, isn't that kind of dated? And you're right, we're not focused on the specific stats. Instead, we're treating this book like a fascinating time capsule, a case study that shows us a timeless academic method for how knowledge is actually structured. It's a perfect example of how to build understanding right from the ground up.
Here's our itinerary for the tour. First, we'll look at the guide's main purpose. Then, we'll check out its blueprint for knowledge, see the foundation of facts it's built on, explore the network of real-world action it connects to, and finally, we'll talk about why this whole framework is so important.
Okay, first stop. Before we get into the nuts and bolts, we have to understand the philosophy behind our guide. What was its actual mission?
This quote from the book's preface really says it all. The goal was never to tell people what to think. It was to lay out the facts, the data, and the context so that readers could form their own informed opinions. It's all about empowerment, not persuasion.
So the key here, the thing I really want you to take away, is that we're using this book's structure as a masterclass in how to process information. The real lesson is the method. It's a repeatable process for breaking down any complex subject, and that's a skill you can use absolutely anywhere.
Let's move on to our second stop. Every good tour needs a map, right? Well, for understanding a complex topic, the map is the structure. This is the blueprint for how you organize the whole investigation. And this is just a brilliant way to do it. The book's table of contents isn't just a random list of chapters, it's a logical three-step process. Step 1, define the population. Who are we actually talking about? Step 2, explore their lived experiences, things like family, work, and politics. And finally, at step 3, measure the social outcomes in key areas like health, education, and justice. Define, explore, measure. It's such a powerful and clear way to approach things.
Okay, on to our third stop. Any solid structure needs a solid foundation, right? So what is this entire blueprint built on? Well, the answer is credible, verifiable data. The book makes it super clear that its authority doesn't come from someone's opinion. It comes from its reliance on hard facts, scientific studies, and statistics. It's all about using data from the most reputable sources to make sure that foundation is as unbiased and reliable as possible.
And here's a look at that very foundation. The book's resources section is basically a who's who of data powerhouses. We're talking the U.S. Census Bureau for population data, the CDC for health stats, the Bureau of Labor Statistics for jobs and the economy, the Bureau of Justice Statistics for crime, and even the Gallup Organization for public opinion. This isn't just one point of view, it's a multifaceted picture built on solid evidence. Now for our fourth stop on the tour. We've seen the blueprint and the foundation, but where does all this information actually live and breathe in the real world? This is such a simple but absolutely crucial point. These numbers, these statistics, they aren't just sitting in a report somewhere. They're generated by and used by real organizations doing real work every single day. They're part of a living, breathing ecosystem. And here is that ecosystem in action. The book's appendix of important names really shows you the whole network. You've got government agencies like the Department of Education that set policy. You have legendary civil rights groups like the NAACP fighting for change. You have research centers like the Pew Hispanic Center analyzing all the trends, and community-focused groups working right on the ground. This is what connects the abstract data to tangible, real-world action. And that brings us to our final, and I think most important, stop. We've taken the tour, we've seen all the pieces, so now let's zoom out and really understand why this structured approach is so incredibly valuable.
This slide just lays it all out perfectly. On the left, you've got information overload, how we usually experience this stuff. It's a chaotic storm of disconnected headlines and random stats that just leads to confusion. But on the right, you have the powerful alternative we've just walked through. A clear, logical framework. You define, you structure, you use credible sources, and you connect it to real-world action. It's the difference between being lost in the woods and having a map. So the ultimate takeaway from our tour today is this. The most important skill isn't just knowing a bunch of facts. It's understanding the architecture of knowledge, how it's put together, where it comes from, and how it's actually used. Once you get that, you can make sense of pretty much anything.
And that leaves us with one last question to chew on. We've just analyzed a blueprint from 2012. Now, that core method, define, explore, measure, that's timeless, but the specifics, they'd have to change. What new sources, what new organizations, and what new questions would be essential to build a guide for understanding this complex topic today? That's something to think about.